Hey everybody, it's Mike again, and what we have in this lesson is another suspended chord, and it is the Esus, or the Esus4. Now, it can be written both ways, and the reason why is that what we're doing is we're taking a note that would traditionally be in a regular E chord, or an E major chord, and we are lifting it up a half step, and we are suspending it, if you will. The idea is typically that it's not going to stay there. We won't leave it suspended, hanging in air, but instead we will resolve it and bring it right back down to where it should be to create the traditional voicing of the major chord. And in the case of the E, what we're doing is we're playing the E major chord, and then we're taking the middle note in that major chord, which in the case of E is a G sharp, and we are suspending it to an A. So, okay, the way we play this chord is we fret out a traditional E chord. That's how we start. Because, as I said, typically you're going to suspend that note and then drop it back down, which means that these sus chords, typically we want to be fretting out the main major chord where we would normally do it. And in the case of the E, you should be familiar with this. In the case of the E, it's the second finger on the second fret of the fifth string, your third finger on the second fret of the fourth string, and then your first finger here on the first fret of the third string. It is a 6-string chord, this E major, and so is the sus chord. So here's that E. Now we're going to suspend this middle note in the major chord by taking our fourth finger and fretting down on the second fret of the third string. You see how I've done that? I'm going to move these other fingers out of the way so you can see what's happening. This note is just being lifted up to this fret by doing that. So what we have is these 3 fingers in a row like that. So here's the E, suspended, back to the E, suspended, now typically we don't leave the suspended chord hanging up there. It just sort of feels like, doesn't it, that we're supposed to go somewhere from here and where we're supposed to go typically is resolve that suspension, release it, and go back to the major chord. Now let's talk about the theory that we have behind this and what's happening when we suspend this note. In a E major chord we have 3 notes, and that is E, G sharp, and B. Now if you want to know more about theory and where these notes have their place in the scale, check out some of our other resources online, but for the purposes of just learning this Esus4 chord, understand the reason why we're calling it a sus4 is that in an E major chord, these 3 notes are the first, the third, and the fifth note in the scale. And so to create a sus chord, we are taking this third note and we are suspending it up a half step onto the fourth note of the scale. And so in the case of this E major chord, we've got this G sharp, and then we are bringing it up a half step to the A. And that's suspending that G sharp up a half step up to the fourth note in the scale. And then typically what we do is we release that note back to its major, traditional standard major chord. So E, E sus4, back to an E.